City further relaxes social distancing measures as bars and pubs reopen. New infection cluster identified even though COVID cases remain stable. Shanghai starts process of resumption for businesses.
Good evening and welcome. The second phase of relaxed social distancing measures began today with restaurants now allowed to operate until midnight.
Bars and pubs as well as mahjong parlors and party rooms are also allowed to reopen. Caleb Long reports.
Hong Kong people are yet another step closer to returning to their normal lives as the government today further relaxes its social distancing measures. Under the second stage of the relaxation, fitness centers are allowed to have a maximum of 8 people per training group or class. Gym users are also allowed to take off their masks while exercising if the facility has installed air purifiers and meets the requirement of at least 6 air changes per hour. As this fitness center did not meet the requirement, gym users are required to wear masks. Gordon Yao, chairman of the Hong Kong Fitness Guides investigation team, said the industry is worried about having to suspend business again if there is another rebound in the epidemic situation. Therefore, he said gym rooms operators are reluctant to spend thousands of dollars on buying air purifiers. Starting today, catering premises are allowed to operate until midnight, although the maximum number of patrons per table remains at 8. But the capacity for banquets has increased from 20 to 120 people. Despite the relaxation, this restaurant opted to remain open only until 10 p.m. This owner explained that many patrons are already used to having dinner early during the epidemic. Bars and pubs, as well as mahjong premises, are now allowed to reopen and operate until 2 a.m. However, mahjong parlors are required to replace tile sets with cleaned and disinfected sets every time a new player joins the game. Although party rooms are also allowed to reopen, they are restricted to a maximum of 8 customers per room. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Hong Kong logged 291 new COVID infections today, including 38 imported cases.
But worried health officials suspect a new infection cluster has emerged from a restaurant in Chong. Kirsty Khan reports.
This Tam Jai Sam Gore Noodles restaurant in Chong is feared to be the source of a suspected COVID infection cluster after 5 customers were diagnosed with the virus. The patients didn't know each other, and 4 of them had attended courses at the Benchmark Training Center, according to health authorities. Health officials added some people at the classes had taken off their face masks during the training sections.
It's hard to tell whether or not this outbreak or this cluster first took place at which of those 2 locations. It could be that someone was infected at Tam Chai and then he started to infect others at Benchmark. We would have to do epidemiological investigation to find out where they had been and also the testing results.
The other COVID clusters across the city are also expanding. Kwun Tong's Imperial Kitchen reported 3 more positive cases, with the cluster so far reporting a total of 29 infections. 3 more customers who had been to Sky Cuisine in Chong have come down with COVID, bringing the restaurant's infection tally to 73. Furthermore, 38 imported infections were reported, including 2 possible repositive cases. Health authorities said they have identified 1 more case of the Omicron BA.4 variant, a triple-jabbed woman who arrived in Hong Kong via Dubai and Singapore. Meanwhile, a 91-year-old COVID patient who was unvaccinated died at a public hospital yesterday. Kirsty Khan, TVB News.
The Hong Kong University of Science and Technology has developed a hydrogel that kills bacteria and viruses, including the Omicron variant, in Hong Kong's drainage systems. The university's research team says it will help curb the risk of vertical transmission of coronavirus. The hydrogel is mainly made up of water and silica. According to the research team, the hydrogel will begin its purification process when it comes into contact with water. Scientists said it would kill bacteria and viruses, as well as eliminate the bad smell of the city's sewage and drainage systems. The team says the technology will not contaminate water or affect the testing of sewage for traces of COVID-19. The research team and authorities have already begun trials at some public housing estates and residential care homes.
Former Secretary for Constitutional Affairs Michael See died this morning at the age of 76. The news was announced by Richie Hall of the University of Hong Kong and LaSalle College Old Boys Association. His memorial arrangements will be announced shortly. See held various senior government positions, including Secretary for Civil Service before the handover. He later served as Executive Director of the Hong Kong Trade Development Council before joining the business sector.
The mainland reported 1,016 domestic COVID-19 infections. Most of them were identified in Shanghai.
Manufacturing and other sectors in the city are gradually getting back to normal operations after a lengthy lockdown. Public transport there will also partially resume on Sunday.
Beijing reported 50 new COVID infections and 5 asymptomatic cases. 4 districts, including Chaoyang and Xicheng, rolled out a 3-day mass nucleic acid testing program. Sichuan province identified 149 local infections, mainly reported in the city of Guang'an. Provincial health authorities called it the most severe pandemic situation the province has faced in 2 years. Shanghai reported 82 new infections and 637 asymptomatic cases as the pandemic situation there continues to ease. Since mid-April, the financial hub has allowed key enterprises to resume production under certain conditions. Vice Mayor Zhang Wei said Shanghai is at the heart of manufacturing in China and some of its industries could help to drive the activities of other sectors. Authorities also announced that industries will resume work in stages. They will mainly operate under closed-loop production and point-to-point work resumption before the end of May. After that, COVID-0 districts and corporations can resume normal operations. The city also plans to resume services of some bus routes and rail lines starting Sunday. The latest guidelines also stipulate that the headquarters of financial institutions in Shanghai must adopt closed-loop operations. That means no visitors should be allowed in, and employees in key positions must work in shifts to ensure financial services are maintained. Reports say the financial institutions allowed to resume work first, as listed in the clean list, include the Shanghai Futures Exchange and some banks. Authorities are reportedly prioritizing small and micro-sized companies in tax deduction policies, which will likely alleviate some 140 billion yuan of tax burden from the enterprises concerned in 2022.
Still ahead on tonight's news, the latest unemployment numbers for Hong Kong are out and they are not good. Russia says hundreds more Ukrainian soldiers have surrendered in Mariupol. And the U.S. and Turkey hold talks over NATO membership of Finland and Sweden.
Welcome back to TVB News. Hong Kong's unemployment rate climbed to 5.4% between February and April, reaching a 10-month high.
That's also a 0.4 percentage point increase compared to the 3-month period from January to March. More than 200,000 people were unemployed between February and April. That's almost 18,000 more than the figures in the 3-month period starting January this year. The underemployment rate also rose to 3.8%. A sharp increase in unemployment was seen in retail, accommodation, decoration, as well as repair and maintenance for buildings. Secretary for Labor and Welfare, Chong, expects the labor market will improve in the coming months. This as a result of an improving local epidemic situation and the progressive relaxation of social distancing measures.
A computer technician who managed a channel in the social media platform Telegram was given a 6 years and 6 months jail term. The channel was spreading incitement messages. The court heard that between October 2019 and June 2020, Man Ho's Telegram channel sent multiple incitement messages to its some 10,000 members. Such messages include incitement to commit criminal damage to public facilities, public transport and police vehicles. Although Ng did not personally send those messages, the court found Ng responsible for allowing such incitement messages to exist. Ng was earlier found guilty of 7 different charges, including conspiracy to incite other persons to commit criminal damage.
A recent survey by a trade union has found more than 40% of the respondents said their applications for the $10,000 unemployment subsidy were rejected. The Hong Kong Federation of Trade Unions says some respondents were underemployed or unemployed for less than 30 days while submitting the application. 450 unsuccessful applicants had sought help from the union, claiming they were not familiar with the document submission and they didn't know what went wrong with their applications. The trade union is urging the government to set up an appeal mechanism.
The government's inaugural retail green bond slipped below its issue price on its first day of trading. The note started trading at $99.95, 5 cents lower than its issue price, which could be a disappointing start for investors. The 3-year bond, which offers a 2.5% return on a minimum investment of $10,000, attracted over 480,000 subscriptions. Experts said the weak performance is linked to rate hikes in the U.S. Overseas, Moscow says nearly 700 more Ukrainian fighters have surrendered in Russian-held Mariupol as it shores up a key gain in the south of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the United States is the latest Western country to reopen its embassy in Kyiv.
Ukraine has ordered its garrison in Mariupol to stand down, but the ultimate outcome of Europe's deadliest battle in decades remains unresolved. Moscow and Kiev have given different estimates on numbers, but Russia's defense ministry said a total of 1,730 Ukrainian fighters have surrendered from the Azovstal steelworks since Monday. Ukrainian officials have declined to comment publicly on the fate of the fighters, but Russia says 900 Ukrainian troops have been sent to a former prison colony. Meanwhile, more videos emerged of a Ukrainian National Guard operation that blew up a railway bridge ahead of an armored train carrying Russian troops in the south.
3, 2, 1.
The operation was aimed at slowing down the advance of Russian troops in the Luhansk region. Ukraine stressed it did not blow up the train. Ukraine's general staff said in a statement today that Russia's attacks are now focused on the Donetsk region. The statement added that Russian forces suffered significant losses to the north of the region. The British Ministry of Defense says Moscow has fired several senior military commanders for failures in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In an intelligence update, the ministry predicted Russia's central command structure will face more difficulties as top commanders seek cover by deferring to their superiors on key decisions. One of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's advisors says a ceasefire in Ukraine is impossible unless all Russian troops withdraw. In a further sign of normalization, the United States has resumed operations at its embassy. Canada, Britain, and others have also recently resumed embassy operations.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held talks with his Turkish counterpart, with Ankara seemingly remaining reluctant to allow Finland and Sweden to be admitted to NATO. The White House heralded the move as a watershed moment. Daniel Rowell tells us more.
The US has attempted to clarify Turkey's stance on Finland and Sweden's formal bid to join NATO. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu met with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken at the United Nations. There, Cavusoglu affirmed Turkey's support for NATO's open door policy and its understanding of Finland and Sweden's desire to join the alliance in the wake of Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. However, he reiterated Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's demands that Ankara's security concerns about the Nordic nations must be addressed. Among the concerns were fears that Sweden had backed the Kurdistan Workers' Party, which is banned in Turkey. Still, without directly acknowledging Erdogan's complaints about Finland and Sweden, US Secretary of State Blinken stated the White House would work to ensure the NATO expansion process is successful. Turkey and the US released a joint statement after the meeting. It did not mention Finland or Sweden, but said Blinken and Cavusoglu met to reaffirm their strong cooperation as partners and NATO allies. That's in addition to committing to deepening bilateral cooperation through constructive and open dialogue. Meanwhile, both US President Joe Biden and White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan expressed optimism that Turkey's concerns could be successfully addressed and that Finland and Sweden could join NATO.
I got a call months ago from the president of Finland, wanted to come and see me. I saw him. He told me what he was thinking about, and I got a call that both the leader of Finland and Sweden are coming to see me on Thursday. I think we're going to be okay.
You think you've been firm?
I think I'm not going to Turkey, but I think we're going to be okay.
We're confident that at the end of the day, Finland and Sweden will have an effective and efficient accession process, that Turkey's concerns can be addressed. Finland and Sweden are working directly with Turkey to do this, but we're also talking to the Turks to try to help facilitate.
Elsewhere, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen announced her country, along with fellow European Union members Belgium, Germany and the Netherlands, are seeking to increase their offshore wind capacity. This in order to lessen dependence on Russian oil and gas. The four nations will build new wind farms on their respective North Sea coasts. The aim is to increase offshore wind capacity there fourfold by 2030 and tenfold by 2050. This comes after EU leaders agreed in principle in a March summit to phase out Russian gas, oil and coal imports by 2027. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen also revealed that Brussels plans to invest about €300 billion by 2030 to end its reliance on Russian energy. Currently, 40% of the EU's natural gas, 30% of its oil, and almost 20% of its coal are sourced from Russia. Daniel Roll, TVB News.
Top officials at a United Nations Food Security meeting say Russia's war in Ukraine is forcing global prices for grains, cooking oils, fuel and fertilizer to soar.
Pressure is being ramped up on Russia to create corridors so that food and other vital supplies can safely leave Ukraine by land or sea. The UN food chief says the ports must be allowed to reopen because this is not just about Ukraine.
This is about the poorest of the poor around the world who are on the brink of starvation as we speak. So I ask President Putin, if you have any heart at all, to please open these ports. Please assure everyone concerned that the passageways will be clear so that we can feed the poorest of the poor and avert famine.
The Russian invasion in Ukraine threatens to tip tens of millions of people over the edge into food insecurity, followed by malnutrition, mass hunger and famine in a crisis that could last for years.
Russia and Ukraine together account for nearly a third of global wheat supplies. The UN says 36 countries count on Russia and Ukraine for more than half of their wheat imports, including some of the poorest in the world.
South Africa's first black hot air balloon pilot is shaking up what was once an exclusive sport. Samakalang Matabula says she got into the sport by accident, applying for a job in marketing with a hot air balloon company.
Growing up, I had never seen a hot air balloon. There's no balloons flying over Harangua. My interests were cooking, accounting. At some point, I wanted to do media, but ballooning was not something that was in reach for me. When I was introduced to the sport, it was this new and exciting field. And when I found my feet.
The 27-year-old is South Africa's first black hot air balloon pilot and one of the few female pilots in the field. She started to learn about the sport in the marketing department of a hot air balloon tour company and later got a scholarship to do her pilot training. She earned her license last year. She'll compete for the first time in the South African Hot Air Balloon Championship in June. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.